Welcome to Alex and Annie, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we are here today with Marcus Räder, who is the CEO and founder of Hostaway. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure.
We are super excited to dive into your history and just all that you've done in the tech space. I know you've been involved with a lot of different projects over the years, but probably Hostaway, I would imagine, is one of your most proud moments and ventures. And it's been great for Annie and I to watch what you guys have done from afar and learning more about it as we've gotten to know you. But before we get started, can you give our audience a little bit of background on who you are and where you've come from?
Absolutely. So I'm commonly known in the industry as Marcus from Hostaway. I go around the trade shows and meet people. I have long blonde hair, which people usually recognize me from, and I wear strange T-shirts.
You do fit in with us as the Blondies, you know that, right?
Yes.
If anybody's not watching on YouTube, you gotta check it out.
No, the reason I go to a lot of trade shows in the industry is that I'm the founder of Hostaway, property management system and channel manager. And we have the largest marketplace in the industry. So we got over 100 companies that are integrated with us. Of course, the big ones, Airbnb, Vrbo, Expedia, Booking.com, and about 15 other OTAs are included there, but also a lot of really groundbreaking technology companies work with us. And we provide the service as package to property manager to work more effectively, save time, save money, and increase their revenues.
That's great. And I was looking at your kind of your history, your background. You've a very varied background. You've done a lot of different things, but it looks like a lot of what you had done prior to Hostaway was sort of in like internet marketing, optimization. So how do you think that prepared you to ultimately found Hostaway?
I think online advertising, the companies that I worked at, none of them really did anything ad. I never worked at an ad agency. I worked with selling software to ad agencies, but I definitely think having a solid 10-year software background before starting a software company is an advantage, and it's something that we've seen over and over again especially in this industry, because if you're going to start a software company, you're going to want to start it around something that you know something about, something that you're interested in, and something that the market is big enough. But then there's also the question of, do you actually know how to build software or how to run a software company? That's another factor. And for a company to be truly successful, these two things, they need to overlap. You need to have the skills, but you also need to have the interest. And that's where me and my co-founders, because of our technical background, we were able to make sure that we actually have the skills to build the technology that we're building. And of course, we were interested in this industry. So it helped tremendously to work at both successful tech companies and unsuccessful tech companies. Actually, it helps a lot more working at unsuccessful tech companies, which is something a lot of employees don't appreciate, because working at the successful ones, you get promotions, you get more money, you might get rich, but you're gonna have a real fun time and everyone's happy. But the truth is, you won't learn much, because the company is successful sometimes out of pure luck. It can have terrible product, terrible marketing, terrible management, but they might just be in the right place at the right time. And sometimes it's the success you're having in your team is contributed to actually the success of other teams, but you don't know it yet, because everyone's happy when things are successful. And that's why a lot of successful companies go bankrupt, because everyone's so happy, but nobody has ever seen the sad times. And when the sad times come, everyone just gives up. Like you're running full speed ahead, and suddenly you hit a brick wall. Well, you're gonna get a bit startled. But if enough people do that at the same time, then there's nobody stopping them. And that's why I think it's a good idea to join a couple of future failures as well if you want a tech career.
Yeah, you made a really good point before we hit play. Actually, we were talking about city council meeting that I just got back from, and you said, we're talking about how politics come into play so much, and bureaucratic situations like that, and how people just don't want to make a decision, and a lot of times things there's no decision and then things just stalemate. But you had a great point that it's better just to make a decision, even if it's the wrong decision, because you will learn from that. And I think that's interesting to see your take on expressing that it's not always perfect, right? I mean, every venture that you go through, it is super important to have that information and background on what didn't work.
Exactly, and it's a numbers game. It's about no company has made the right decisions. Google is very successful, and they wasted a lot of money on a bunch of products that didn't work. But around 80% of the money that they invested came out with a very positive return, and that's the same with decision making, whether it's in a big organization or small. If you just make 80% the right decisions, things are going to be just fine.
Right.
Yeah. 80%.
But
That doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's really not. But what can be disastrous for
Yeah.
any company that's growing is if you want to make 100% right decisions. What it means is that the time to make the decision gets extended so long that eventually either your key people leave, or your customers leave, or you simply run out of money.
Yeah. That lack of decision can, what is it they say? It's a paralysis by analysis. If you just sit around and wonder what you should be doing instead of trying it and doing and iterating and trying to make things better, you get a little complacent. And by the time you realize that you're complacent and behind, you're too far behind to catch up. So
I think that's one thing that is sometimes overlooked with as much investment capital and everything that's coming into vacation rentals and vacation rental technology, is that sometimes you don't have to be the biggest company on the block. I mean, sometimes as long as your company is run, that hierarchy is there to make decisions quickly. That's really the most important thing at the end of the day. And I know just for our business at Condo World, we're a small business, but it's to be able to make decisions quickly, that I only need to go talk to a couple people or they trust me to make the decision myself. I mean, that really allows you to be so much more flexible than when you do have to go through all that red tape to get anything done. And I've seen that happen at other companies, that they've gotten this great talent that they've recruited to go work for them, but they just get so frustrated because they came from a company like what I'm used to. And then now to have to go through all these different processes, it's like, you never get anything done. But,
that's right. Unfortunately, making decisions, and especially making wrong decisions, that's a skill you have to learn. Nobody's born with it. And I spoke to a fellow entrepreneur who had just received 1 million in funding for their tech company, and she asked me, okay, well, what am I going to do with this now? And I said, well, then I got good news for you. That 1 million will be very well invested. You will use it to hire the wrong people. And if you're lucky, you're going to learn how to hire the right people. But please don't go out and think you're going to hire the right people and everything is going to be good, because you never hired the wrong people in the past. You need to learn how to hire the wrong people. Otherwise, you can never hire the right people. And
great perspective.
She didn't seem happy.
Well, it's not the response you want to get, but
the fact is that it's a lot less stressful. Anything you do in life, it's a lot less stressful if you accept that the best people who are doing this thing right now, they achieved where they are because of a bunch of failures. They didn't achieve it through great success. That goes for guitar playing, for golf, for skateboarding. All of those things you can't learn by doing it right. You have to learn by doing it wrong. And you have to do it wrong a million times to get it right in the first place. It's the same thing with running a company.
So on that, what do you think for you, what have you done wrong that's helped you get to where you are now?
I think raising a bunch of capital to hire the wrong people is definitely it's a double-edged sword. I mean, when investors go in and they put in a lot of money into a company where, I mean, to be perfectly honest, if the management and the founders and the owners of the company, if they're fully confident in their ability to move the company forward, they're not going to talk to investors. There's a lot of good deals on the table, but there's not going to be a good enough deal for someone who really knows what they're doing. But of course, investors, they don't want deals that they can't get. So they're going to take the deals that are second tier, those
Yeah.
that will accept funding.
Mhm.
Those are the ones we read about in the press where people raise a
Yeah.
lot of money.
Yeah.
But they only do that because they're not confident enough, or sometimes rarely there's a deal that actually makes sense, but it's just extremely rare. We raised a lot of, not a lot. We raised actually very little by today's standards. But I think that's the most valuable lesson there. When you put in capital somewhere where it shouldn't be in the first place, let's say you put it with people who don't deserve it because they don't have the experience, there's going to be something magical that happens. And usually what happens is, of course, failure. But then you can learn from that and do it again. In our case, it wasn't a complete failure. In fact, it turned out to be a massive success in the end. But that's the most valuable lesson I got, that first of all, money can be a catalyst to make something else, because it forces you to think in a certain way and act in a certain way. It also forces you to make decisions that you really don't want to make at all. And if you don't have the money, if you don't have the capital available, you won't be forced to make uncomfortable decisions because you can't. You don't have the
Right.
money to make
Yeah.
those decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess money
And-
does provide some luxuries, both negative and positive. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
there's-
yeah, I just wish I could say here that I wish we never raised any capital. But on the other hand, we wouldn't. The money in itself didn't help us get to where we are, but the lessons that we learned by raising that
Yeah.
capital and the decisions we were forced to make because we raised that capital is we couldn't have done it without it.
Wow, what a great
It's
perspective.
a really good
I
perspective.
appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing that too. I'm curious, Marcus, can you go back to the early years? How did you start Hostaway? Let's kind of go back to the beginning.
All right, I started by becoming an immigrant. My wife and I decided to move to Canada, and we had never been, but we heard that it was great, and we decided to move here. And as we got here, I was looking around, thinking what I would do, and I thought we'd rent out one of our properties on Airbnb.
Yeah.
And I started investigating it. Of course, to the listeners who are experts, this is going to sound quite far out, but I was under the impression there was an app who would take care of everything. Actually, first I looked into Airbnb, but I found out if I got properties around the globe, I'm not going to be able to use Airbnb for that, because Airbnb doesn't clean. Airbnb doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
What if who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to take care of everything?
Yeah.
And I thought there's got to be an app for that. Clearly, Airbnb doesn't do it, but there's got to be an app for that. It's amazing, by the way, how even today there's not really an app for that.
Yeah.
It's still
I'm sure most
property.
investors that get into it right now think the exact same thing that you did. So,
Yes, exactly. So I thought, okay, well, there's no app for that. Maybe there's a valid reason for not having an app for that, but it's certainly worth investigating. And I spent about 6 months investigating the market. What I found out was that you have to keep in mind the time, though. This was in 2015, when there was a very clear division between what was called Airbnb, which were small units in city centers.
and couches.
Yes, and couches
Homes, yeah.
and spare
Yeah.
bedrooms. And it was an entirely different market from Destin, Florida. There was no Airbnb in Destin, Florida at all. There were vacation rentals, but they were not intertwined in any way like they are today.
Yeah.
So I started researching the market, and I started. It was surprisingly easy to find property managers that were willing to talk to me. I just reached out. I spoke to around 40 property managers in the city of Toronto, and there were thousands of them.
Really?
Back then. Yeah. And they all told the same story, that this is a great business, but they need the tools to grow and manage their business. They specifically need a channel manager, and that's what we started building. Of course, you can't just build that, because that requires you to have connections to Airbnb and Booking.com and Vrbo and Expedia, and those companies, they don't want to deal with you. not if you're unknown and small. Of course, they want to deal with us today. And in fact,
Yeah.
we're an elite partner of Verbo. I was just in Vegas for a week celebrating with them at the Expedia Explore.
Yeah.
And we're a preferred partner of Airbnb and Premier with Booking.com. But that's because now we bring them good business. But back then, when we were starting out, we weren't. And it's the same today. You want to set up a business in this industry, well, you got to be someone to have a chance to be someone. But if you're a nobody, you're not going to have a chance to be someone, which was exactly the problem we had to overcome. And eventually we overcame it. And we just started growing the business from there. So that's how we got started.
We talk a lot about finding an anchor partner in a market as we're growing. And that's just a strategy that's worked really well for us. And that same thing has happened, that when we want to go into a new market or want to build a new integration, if the company doesn't know of us, it's like, well, who do you work with that wants you to integrate with us? And as long as we bring somebody with us to the table, normally it works fine. But yeah, I definitely understand those struggles, because it's like, you have to have clout in order to get some of these things done, but you can't have clout until you have the experience and you have the people that can vouch that they want to work with you. So it can be a tough thing to get started. And I'm sure a lot of companies, that's where they just, mistakenly think that raising the capital is going to solve that kind of problem. And it's not. I mean, money is not going to get you more partners necessarily. You need the experience, and really the relationships is what it comes down to.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a certain element of luck in that, but it's also about planting seeds. If you truly go out on a mission and you want to accomplish something, you want to build a company and get those connections, it's not going to end up looking exactly like you thought it would. But if you just keep planting seeds, just talk to everyone you can, even if they're the wrong person, maybe they know someone, just keep talking. And year after year, you keep talking to new people just to make sure they know that you're on a mission here. Then eventually one of those people or one of those connections they have is going to bring something good in front of you. And when that happens, when you get your lucky break, it's not luck. It may look like that. You may think, wow, what are the odds that this person that I spoke to happened to be married to this person who is actually working in this company that I'm trying to approach right now. But if you just plant enough seeds with enough time and keep at it, don't stop, just keep at it, eventually one of those seeds is going to sprout.
It's connecting all the dots along the way. We talk about this all the time, about how, you're building up, even if it's your personal branding, you're building it up over time. And it doesn't seem to make sense as to why you had to take the turns and twists that you did. But then when it all falls into place, it's because it was just meant to fall into place at that exact moment in time. So what you're saying is spot on. And I think along the way too, that's why you hire some wrong hires. You just don't know what you need to know, and you think you've got somebody who has maybe the skill set, but they don't have the relationships or the connections that are already kind of built into their repertoire to help you grow. So kudos to you, because it sounds like you had a mission, it got implanted in your brain, and that you just drove and drove until you could get it out into the marketplace and make it a reality.
It was a long drive. Yes.
drive. Yeah. There's a good phrase that I like to use, ROL, the return on luck. And that's exactly what you just spoke about. I mean, it's that return. It comes, you finally do see that ROL when you look back and you realize it was all those seeds that planted that. Exactly like you said, it could be somebody's wife that is connected to someone you're trying to work with. And, somehow in friendships, you end up connecting those dots, but you can't connect the dots until you're farther enough forward to look back and do so.
Exactly. And then you should still call it luck, because it make a much more interesting story.
Exactly.
If you got a terrible idea that nobody believes in, and you go and tell it to 1,000 people, and then one of those people turned out to actually believe in it, and the other 999 didn't, it's not an interesting story that you go around telling people how you pitched this to 999 people that didn't believe in it. It's much more interesting if you said, I mentioned this to Joe, and you know what happened just 6 months later?
Yep.
Yeah.
Incredible luck.
Yeah.
That's how you
true.
should
People
pitch
want
it.
that story. Yeah, they want
Yeah.
that gold, what is it, the little four-leaf clover to pop up every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But if you're listening and just starting out, don't believe for 1 second that luck is going to come and save you.
Yeah. Not on its own. Definitely not on its own.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to plant the seeds to grow the four-leaf clovers. So
Yeah. Yeah. So now with Hostaway, I mean, at this point, what do you see as what are the main objectives at this point? I mean, you're very well established and you've planted those seeds and you've gotten in pretty good use within the market. But what are your goals for bringing the company to the next Hostaway?
I think at least for me personally, what really motivates me right now is the way the industry is moving. There's a lot of consolidation going on. There's a lot of investments being made into the industry. There's also on the property management level a lot of changes coming ahead.
Yeah.
And that really motivates me because I'm a wartime CEO, not a peacetime CEO.
Yeah.
So if everything is stable and everything is fine, I'm actually bored. But right now, I'm terribly excited about
It's
the
definitely
future.
not boring.
Yeah. No, I want to see our competitors raise a lot of capital and then come and compete with us. I want to see other competitors raise a lot of capital and then fail miserably. I really enjoy that right now.
That's honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're in a really good position right now. We really don't need to do much. We're gonna improve everything that we're doing today.
Yeah.
We're gonna build stronger teams, and take over the world like every other company aims to.
World domination.
Yeah.
One day at a time.
But we reach a stage now where we don't need any magical tricks to do it. We found our formula. We just need to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So how do you see, as it relates to your competitors, how do you see your differentiators? Because I think there's a few others that are kind of operating in a similar space in that they are a multi-solution within one platform for a PM. So they don't have to go, and we've talked to a lot of CEOs from different tech companies and talking about the volatility within the tech stacks. There's consolidation going on. There's too many pieces of a tech stack for a PMC to have to manage. It's becoming cumbersome to manage. It's becoming expensive. And so there are a lot more solutions that are kind of an all-in-one. And so how do you see yourself against your competitive set in terms of your differentiators, or maybe what's going to catapult you to world domination, if you will?
There's really two USPs that we have. One is the channel connections. I mean, just objectively speaking, if you wanted to take someone who's a premier partner of Booking.com and an elite partner of Vrbo and a preferred partner of Airbnb and has a direct API integration with Expedia, Marriott, and Google Travel, there's pretty much only one company on this entire planet who has all of that.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I dare you to find another one.
That's
interesting.
So what is the one thing that people don't normally have that you have of those connections?
Well, I mean, either you have strong Vrbo Expedia connections, maybe you have Airbnb, but then you don't have the others. So the benefit of going with a strong channel manager is that when things change, for example, tomorrow is May 11th, Airbnb is going to announce some very big changes.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to be a preferred partner of Airbnb, you were to be prepared for those changes in advance. Now, if you were not the preferred partner, you would not have any time to prepare and you would have to be reactive. Now, for the clients, that means that whatever's going on in the marketing, whatever's the new big thing, they're going to be 6 months behind their competition unless they're using someone who's a preferred or premier partner.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So with that update that's coming tomorrow, Andy and I were just talking about this yesterday, what do you think is going to be part of that? Or you might know, I don't know if you can share, but any insights on that?
I can't really comment on whether I know or not, but I'm pretty sure, considering their good growth, I'm pretty sure they're going to announce something along the lines of COVID is over and we're going to dominate the world, take over the world. But we'll know tomorrow.
Yeah, it's interesting. in Europe, they charge 14%, right? And so that's been a lot of the talk, I think, is that that's going to come to the States. To asking both of you, Annie, because you might know better than I do too. Do you think that that is going to happen in the near term?
We're seeing it with some of our partners. I don't know. I can't speak. I can't speak broadly. Marcus, you might know more.
Are they doing it by partner, or is it going to be a blanket policy?
It's a market thing so far as I've seen, but Marcus,
Okay.
again, he's a preferred. We're not. He might know better.
Yeah. So the fee structure. I'm now gonna pretend that I'm not a partner of Airbnb. I'm just gonna speak as an outsider.
Yeah.
If you look at other industries, they tend to try different business models and monetization models. For example, if you look at the car industry, how they're selling cars, the way the revenues are divided between the distributor, the factories, the one who owns the brand, and how all of that is separated. When one car company finds the formula, the others have it, and then suddenly it's the industry norm, the industry standard. For OTAs, there already is an industry standard, and Airbnb hasn't been following it. And the industry standard is that you bring them business and they give you a kickback. Airbnb hasn't been doing that. They have been actually owning a part of the value chain. So they say, look, you don't need to pay us at all. In fact, we're going to pay you.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite value proposition that some compared to Booking.com, who says, you're going to pay us, but we're going to bring you all the business. But they didn't go out and say, we're going to pay you. That's what Airbnb did. Now, the challenge with that, and this is purely my personal opinion, not as an Airbnb partner, I think the challenge is going to be on the stock market. Because if you got an industry that's very standardized, where everyone's doing the same thing, it's going to be very hard for any analyst to suddenly work with a different business model. And I think that's why Airbnb just needs to play the game in the same way that everyone else is playing.
Yeah. What do you think on that note, what do you think about, there's a lot of new channels that have kind of come out the last, I say year, but they've been kind of I think in modeling for longer than a year, that are going in lower commission or lower fee to the consumer and much lower commission to the partners. Do you think that there's staying power there? And will that ultimately disrupt the way, Expedia, Booking, and Airbnb are doing business? Or do you think that they'll ultimately get bought by these larger ones? So, again, going to the conversation of consolidation, what do you foresee is going to happen on the channel side of things?
On the channel side right now, things are pretty good, but they all face the same challenges that the big ones are facing, and that's lack of inventory.
Yeah,
people want to book, there's nothing available to book, and there's of course a lot of reasons for that. But let's say if I was managing an OTA and I wanted to compete with Airbnb, I'd say the easiest way to get inventory and get more inventory than Airbnb is to have more money than Airbnb. Challenge with that though is that Airbnb has a couple of billion, and so does Expedia, and so does Booking.com. If I don't have several $1 billion on my bank account, how am I going to be able to compete? How am I going to be able to advertise to get the inventory?
Right.
Right now, I don't need to spend any money on advertising to consumers. Well, any money is relative. Let's say with 10 million, you can get people to your website and they will try to book. But if you have nothing to sell them, then it's going to be tough. So I can see from an investor point of view that they want to invest in OTAs. But when I speak to new OTAs, I always say, and I speak a lot to them as we have them integrating with us, you don't need 100 million today, but your business plan needs to have a path to getting 100 million, because you won't be successful unless you have that. You won't be able to compete with the marketing budgets of the Airbnbs and the smaller ones of this world unless you have that.
Yeah, that's very
and
true.
that advice still stands today. It's just today the marketing needs to be catered towards the property managers and the property owners rather than the travelers.
Yeah.
They've made it hard for everybody to compete. And I know here in our local market, I mean, we consider ourselves, I think other people do too, a hybrid OTA model that we're property management, but we also operate our website as an OTA regionally and in a few other areas for other professionally managed properties. And, it's when we first started this venture about 7 years ago, the plan was immediately go for world domination, get all the markets, but quickly realized that that was not affordable. Are not accepting funding, and that was not the plan, and probably won't be the plan. But we realized we had to grow much more organically than that. And that's, for a company that wants to come in and become the massive OTA, our process would be taking way too long for what their goals are. But we've been able to do it in a more curated relationship way that it's worked and is profitable. But it is definitely a challenge. I mean, we can't go out there and just get properties from anywhere and think we can easily advertise them to the extent that Vrbo and Airbnb can. But, I think with Airbnb, one of the threats is, I mean, if they are to raise the commission from 5% to 14%, it's the don't build your house on someone else's land concept. I mean, where does that end? They could come back to everybody, and any of the channels could come back.
But
say,
Airbnb and Vrbo, they're already charging around 15-20% in the US. So if someone gets a credit card statement that says you paid 1,000 to Airbnb, the amount that the property manager gets, they'll get a line that says 900 minus 5% or minus 4%.
Right. Yeah. If you have it
but
set,
the total difference between what the guest pays is pretty much the same on all the OTAs. So it's between 15 and 20%, the difference with what the guest pays and what the property manager gets.
Yeah.
So it's not about more or less money for Airbnb. I mean, they get the same percentage overall in regardless of the payment model. It's more about the business model.
Just about who's actually paying the money.
Yeah. So is it going to shift then, do you think, so that, because right now you have the option on Airbnb that either the guest or the host can pay the traveler fee, but is it going in the direction that it's going to be the host has to pay it? Do you think?
Well, the host already pays it today. I think it's
they do.
technicality.
They mark it up. Yeah.
I mean, if you're selling a place for 900 and the guest pays the guest fee, the guest doesn't pay 900. They pay 1,000.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
so it's already being paid today.
Yeah.
And as a host, you get 850.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we were to switch that around and say the host pays the fees, the host would still get 850. The guest would still pay 1,000. It's the same outcome. It's the exact same money.
Yeah.
In one case, Airbnb takes 15%. In the other case, Airbnb takes 15%. Or to put it in another way,
right.
In one case, the guest pays.
For the property manager, they're making less, because right now on Airbnb specifically, we have it so that the guest is paying the traveler fee. But if that moves over so that we're paying that definitely becomes a higher commission for us.
But are you marking your rates up? So like our partners mark their rate up to cover that fee.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yes, the guest theoretically is paying it, but ultimately the PM is losing it off the rate, but they're marking it up. So I think again, it's the markup game that everybody
and then also how I mean you're managing properties on behalf of others. There's money at least 4 different stages. One is in the guest's pocket, they have 1,000. Then there's money that comes in to the property manager. So there's a stage in between when the money leaves the pocket of the guest and comes into the property manager. Now that's relevant because that's where all the fees, including whatever's being paid to Airbnb, 5 or 15, can be paid either by the guest or the property manager or the owner of the property. And that's where you get to decide. And then there's a stage when the money is in the property manager's pocket. That's when you remove expenses. But then there's also another stage when it moves to the owner's pocket.
Right.
And that's another point where you can put in the extra fees. For example, a credit card processing fee could be removed from that. So in the end, it's still 1,000 and you get 850, regardless of how you divide that 15%. But it's about where do you put the fees and what does the agreement with the owners say?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
And the money to the owners comes from the consumers. So you want to market it in a way that's attractive to as many consumers as possible. And that's exactly what companies like Airbnb, they have more data than any property manager. They know
Yeah.
If you have an extra, if you have a high cleaning fee, for example,
Yeah.
there's going to be less bookings. They know
Yeah.
that because they can look at the data points
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
And that's where they're really good. And that's where I think Airbnb, I would make the case that if you give the person who's booking two options, one with an extra fee for Airbnb and one without an extra fee,
Yeah.
but a higher price, I think they'll choose the one without the extra fee.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes
Well, I
sense.
think we could try to dissect Airbnb all day long. I think that's like the the hot topic for everybody to discuss. It's going to be interesting to see what they do announce, and we'll come back and get your opinion on that, Marcus. Obviously, I think you'll have some nice comments and commentary about how it works out and maybe the future of it. But I think for us, like, what we want to do is talk about, Hostaway and what you guys are doing to change the industry. And one of the things that we've been seeing a lot, and I kind of alluded to it a little earlier, was there's a lot of consolidation going on within the industry. And again, kind of to building what you already have in place, these technology stacks that are kind of all in one. What are you seeing and what do you think about consolidation as it stands now, not only with the property managers, but within the technology side?
So it's important to keep in mind that anything that happens right now is determined by the macro and microeconomic environment that we have right now. So for example, it's easy to have consolidation going on when there's a lot of capital flowing in. What if that capital doesn't flow in? Suddenly it gets very hard to do consolidations. And that goes both on the tech side and property management side as well. Now, another aspect here is that one argument that I've heard on why consolidation in the property management space isn't actually going to help is that when a bigger company acquires a smaller company, typically what happens is the prices go up and the service level goes down. And that's across any industry. And I'm sure it's true in our industry as well. Any other thing would be just superficial. Sometimes you acquire companies, you keep the standard there for a few years so that you earn people's trust, and then you lower standards or raise prices or both. Now, an argument that some people are making is that, well, if you remove one property management company, the owners are just going to switch to whoever comes in and says, we're going to do more work for less money.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very easy to enter the market the moment someone's being bought up, and then the value that the acquirer bought evaporates over time. Now, the reason I said that we're in a specific moment of history right now is that whole equation changes when you suddenly get everything turned upside down. We have the industry for the last 20 years have been focusing on how to attract travelers. But for the last 18 months or so, it's been the opposite.
Yeah, how to get owners.
Yes, or how to actually get the properties.
Yeah.
So suddenly maybe those acquisitions start making sense when you got limited amount of properties. Let's say you have a beach with 50 beach houses. Now, if you acquire the property manager who's managing 20 out of 50 houses, then that's 20 out of 50 houses. They can't build more. There's no lots available on that beach, and they get something that nobody else can have, which is those 20 houses. If they can acquire another company that has 30, they'll have 100% market share. And of course, there's other beaches around, but still, whatever decisions are being made today, that will change the moment we go back to how do we attract travelers. Right now, there's a massive economic boom in North America. There's almost no unemployment at all, and there's a lack of workforce. Basically, everyone who had a job, they have been able to switch to a more well-paying job.
Right. Yeah.
And as a result of it, they can afford to take more vacations.
Yeah.
And more expensive vacations. And as a result of that, companies make more money, they can pay more dividends, so other people can take even more expensive vacations. That's why rates are going up. But at some point that stops.
Right.
Unless we're going to see an unprecedented economic boom that lasts the next 10 years, which would be in history quite original, because the economy started going well in 2011. That's 11 years ago. Are we
Yeah.
going to do another 10 years of
Yeah. Yeah. Hard to
booming,
imagine.
of rocket launch?
Yeah.
Or are we going to settle down? Are
Yeah.
things going to get a bit worse from now on? People will
Yeah.
start losing their jobs. They won't get a raise. They won't get a promotion. They might even get laid off.
Yeah.
That's the question. And that's when this consolidation, it changes the entire game.
Yeah.
Yeah, just watching prices this year has just been like a roller coaster. I mean, we started out early in the year, and I don't mean we, I mean just the beach markets, the big vacation markets, so high. And then now pace has slowed since about mid-March. And I was talking to one manager today, and they said, you know, we're slashing prices and we plan to slash them more. I'm like, all the gains that you made earlier in the year now are essentially a wash if you get to that point. And it's creating two different problems. That one, the people that booked earlier in the year at that premium price, when they get here, is the product going to be what they were expecting for that, you know, amount that they paid? And then two, when you have to drop the prices that low, are you getting the guests that we really want to have? And I think we were all, as an industry or in certain areas, very excited about the potential that COVID gave all of us to be able to raise rates, and more than just an incremental hair. I mean, now we've actually raised rates to a lot closer to what they should be for as much as value as the destination offers and the product offers. But there's going to be a leveling out, I think. I mean, I think this is still going to be a good year, but it's going to be more close to 2019. And then next year is just really even more of a question mark to me right now than it was a few months ago, just because of what's happened so far this year. So a lot of different changes coming. And I think further consolidation on the vendor side and tech side and property managers side, combined with a lot of new owners coming into the market, that they're coming in as short-term rental, investors, and they're buying a bunch of properties and they don't know what they're doing. And they're either trying it on their own or they're bringing it to a professional company. But it's an interesting time to be in the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The laws of supply and demand are really being tested right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, sorry, they're not being tested, but they're put in very interesting perspective, because you got so many factors right now affecting both supply and demand.
Right, exactly, opposite directions.
So you just mentioned that there's people who are entering the market by investing into short-term rentals, but at the same time, there's inventory being taken out. And if the prices drop, with the increase in rents, you can make more money on the long-term side. So that's going to take off supply. And then there's people also buying to live in the places, but then you have people adding to the supply. So that's why I say there's so many factors affecting both the supply and the demand right now that is really interesting to see. And the price is, of course, the outcome of that equation, but the factors within that equation, they change so dramatically. So the price is basically just a side product. It's an afterthought. But of course, that price, it has to be something that a large amount of people can afford to buy or pay. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense when your 1 week beach vacation costs you $500,000. And a lot of people will start thinking on whether they can actually afford it.
And they might just vacation now once every 2 or 3 years if it's going to be at that price. I mean, most people can't afford to do that every year now.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alex. I thought you were going to ask another question. No. So I think kind of to wrap things up, Marcus, would love to get your thoughts on where you think your Hostaway is going to be in a couple of years. Like, what is your direction? Obviously, world domination, we've established that, and I think you're well on your way to doing it. But do you see you guys getting into maybe more traditional hotel lodging? What is it that is on the horizon for Hostaway?
There's a lot of paths to take, and I'm not gonna share anything right now, but I think we're gonna just keep doing what we're doing right now. And the reason I'm saying that is that I think it's a bit too early to start talking about hotels, long-term rentals, multifamily. There's a lot of industries that are wondering how they get in, because everyone wants into this space right now. But that also means that a lot of big companies are going to invest hundreds of millions to make mistakes that I can learn from. which in turn will save me hundreds of millions,
Mhm.
which is why I'm not so excited about going and investing into expanding into other areas right now, because I know
Right.
there's people with more experience and more money than me who can do that, but I can learn from their mistakes.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's
Makes
good
a lot of
point.
sense.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Makes a
Very
whole lot
smart
of sense.
perspective. Well, Marcus, we normally send you, or we send our guests a couple questions to ask at the end, and we sent them to you, and you said that you would be open to answering any of them. So Annie, you get to pick from the list because I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. Okay. What would Marcus of today tell Marcus who was 21 about your journey to where you are now?
Good question. I think
Don't take money from investors.
Hire the wrong people.
Yeah.
no. First of all, go get a job. I mean,
Yeah.
really get and get a lot of work experience,
Yeah.
because without that you won't have the perspective to manage other people. For example, when
Right.
if you just start a company as a 21-year-old and you start hiring people, those people are going to have expectations on what a workplace is supposed to be like, what a career looks like. Now, if you never seen that firsthand, you're going to see to be very detached from reality, and because you haven't done a career yourself. So my first advice would be to do exactly that. But then I think the only advice that I would give is the one that I wouldn't even listen to. But it's ironically to actually listen to the advice.
Yeah.
My wife told me when I was starting Hostaway, hey, you should read this book. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
I've heard of that
And
book, but I haven't read it.
We have
But
to put that
yeah,
down on
I'll
our
have to
list,
write that
Alex.
down. Yeah.
yeah, there were a couple of points in history when I was almost breaking down, and at one of those points I picked up that book, and it really saved my life, and it
Oh,
saved
wow.
my company. It's
Oh, wow.
I just wish I had read it when my wife said I should read it. I was too busy starting her company. I think it would have
Yeah.
saved me from a lot of heartache.
Oh, wow.
Hopefully you listen to your wife more now.
Yeah, that's a great
Yes,
recommendation. We definitely will.
absolutely, absolutely. But
Yeah.
one thing about advice that I wish someone would have told me, maybe myself would have told me, do keep in mind that the background of the people that are giving the advice. For
Yeah.
example, there's a lot of successful business people who go out and say, you need to focus on the culture. Or they go out and say, surround yourself with the right people. Now, this is the type of advice that is 100% correct, because that is the only way of doing things and being successful. However, it's a type of advice that has a survivorship bias. If you put 100 people in a race with only one winner, that's the advice the winner would say.
Yeah.
But the other 99, if you tell them the same advice, they still can't win, because there's only
Right.
one winner in that race.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that was very confusing for me when I started out. Was all the advice that was available, it didn't help me at all, because I was one of those 99.
Right.
I needed basically, if it's a race to run, the advice is run faster.
Yeah.
Or maybe the advice is, hey, you're low on yeah, you need to drink more water. Simple advice like
Yeah.
that.
Simple advice. Yeah,
But to come and
exactly.
say,
Yeah.
just have a goal and aim for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great for that one person who actually won the race.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Maybe people are too focused on having their advice be more profound
right.
than
That's
being
what I was thinking
helpful.
too.
Yeah.
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 It's more, sometimes you just need the basic advice that could really change somebody's complete trajectory.
Yeah.
Well, the sad thing when you go and look at trade shows, and you go and look at when you listen to podcasters, everyone wants to interview the successful people,
Yeah.
but they have that survivor bias. They have the bias of success.
Yeah.
But actually, you don't learn much from that. If someone says build a good company culture, what most companies need is money.
Yeah.
It's really that simple. You have expenses and you have income. And when
Yeah.
you start a company, your income is zero and your expenses are, well, at bare
High.
minimum,
Yeah.
you need
Yeah.
food. You
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
food,
Yeah.
because it's hard to survive without food and water and shelter. You need that at bare minimum. but nobody on stage is ever going to go and say that.
Yeah.
Because those that are successful, they have forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, I think your perspective on everything is just super interesting and insightful, and we appreciate
Honest.
all the learnings that I mean, I know I've learned a lot today, and
Yeah.
I think just really interesting to hear what you've told us, and really appreciate you being so candid about it
Absolutely.
too. But I think, planting seeds, I think that's the most important takeaway, and it's just so true. I mean, the importance of planting seeds and knowing that you have to just keep doing it, and that you are going to get that return on luck, and that it is going to finally come back, and you're going to realize why all those connections were there in the first place. And that's really, it's been a theme of why Annie and I started this podcast, actually. So happy to hear somebody of your stature and success say the same thing. But
well, Marcus, if people would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
I would recommend LinkedIn. Just open up your browser and type in Marcus Hostaway LinkedIn, or even just Marcus Hostaway, and you'll find me.
Yeah,
Perfect.
we'll include in the show notes how to get in touch with you, and link to your LinkedIn as well as to Hostaway if anybody wants more information about the amazing suite of products that they have. And in the meantime, if you want to contact Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com, or if you're enjoying the show, please go on our site or to Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a review, and we will see everybody next time. Thanks so much for tuning
Marcus.
in.
Thanks, everyone.